The spotlight hit Elvis mid-note. His voice cracked. 20,000 people watched him stop singing, drop the microphone to his side, and stare into the darkness of the arena. Nobody breathed. Nobody moved. The band kept playing for 3 more beats before they realized something was wrong and the music died. Elvis Presley, the king of rock and roll, was crying on stage. This was June 25, 1977. Memphis, Tennessee. The show that would become his last major performance. Nobody knew it then, but what happened in the next 12 minutes would define Elvis Presley's legacy more than any hit song ever could. But to understand that moment, you have to go back. Back to how it started. Back to the woman nobody saw coming. 2 hours before the show, the Coliseum was electric. Fans had camped outside for days. Some traveled across state lines just to see him. Elvis was 42, heavier than his prime years, his health visibly declining, but when that man walked on stage, time stopped. He still had it. That presence. That voice that could make you feel like he was singing directly to your soul. Backstage, Elvis's manager was going through the set list one more time. Blue suede shoes. To open. Love Me Tender. In the middle. Can't Help Falling in Love. To close. Standard. Safe. Proven. But Elvis wasn't listening. He was staring at a letter that had been slipped under his dressing room door. No envelope. Just a single piece of notebook paper, folded twice. The handwriting was shaky, almost childlike. It read, "Mr. Presley, my name is Dorothy Sinclair. I'm 68 years old. My husband died 3 months ago. We were married for 47 years. He loved your music more than anything. The last thing he said to me before he passed was play some Elvis. I'm here tonight because I promised him I would hear you sing one more time. I used our savings to buy the ticket. I know you'll never see this note, but I wanted to try. Thank you for giving us so much joy." Elvis read it 3 times. His hands were shaking. His road manager noticed. "Boss, you okay? 15 minutes till showtime." Elvis folded the letter carefully and put it in his jumpsuit pocket. "Find her," he said quietly. "Find who?" "Dorothy Sinclair. She's out there somewhere. Find her and bring her backstage after the show." The show started like fire. Elvis hit the stage and the crowd erupted. He moved through the first 6 songs with the energy of a man half his age. By the 7th song, sweat was pouring down his face, but he was smiling. This was what he lived for. These moments when music made everything else disappear. Then midway through, Suspicious Minds, something shifted. Elvis stopped singing mid-verse. The arena fell into a silence so complete you could hear the air conditioning humming in the rafters. He walked to the edge of the stage, one hand on his chest, breathing hard. The band stopped playing. 20,000 people held their breath. Security moved forward, thinking he was having a medical emergency. But Elvis waved them off. He pulled the small piece of paper from his pocket, unfolded it slowly, and read it again under the stage lights. When he looked up, his eyes were red. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, his voice barely above a whisper but somehow reaching every corner of that massive space. "I need to find someone. Her name is Dorothy Sinclair. Ma'am, if you're here, I need you to stand up." The crowd murmured in confusion. Heads turned. Whispers rippled through the rows. Nothing happened for what felt like an eternity. Then, in section 214, row K, an elderly woman in a simple floral dress slowly stood up. Her hands were trembling. She looked around, terrified, as if she'd done something wrong. Elvis saw her. He pointed. "There. That's her. Ma'am, don't be scared. I need you to come down here." Security started moving toward her, but Elvis stopped them. "No. Let the people help her." And they did. Strangers in the audience began guiding her down the aisle, holding her arm, making sure she didn't fall on the stairs. It took 3 full minutes for her to reach the stage. By the time Dorothy Sinclair stood at the base of the stage, looking up at Elvis Presley with tears streaming down her face, the entire arena was crying with her. Elvis knelt down. He was still breathing hard, sweat dripping onto his white jumpsuit. "Mrs. Sinclair," he said, "I read your letter." She couldn't speak. She just nodded, covering her mouth with both hands. "What was your husband's name?" "Robert," she whispered. "Everyone called him Bobby." Elvis nodded slowly. He looked at the band. "Boys, I need you to play something for me. Can you do Love Me Tender?" The guitarist looked confused. That was supposed to be the closing song. But he started playing anyway. Backstage, Elvis's team was in chaos. Nobody knew what was happening. The show had gone completely off script. But out front, magic was unfolding. Elvis didn't get up from his kneeling position. He sang, "Love Me Tender," directly to Dorothy Sinclair, like she was the only person in that arena. His voice was soft, tender, almost breaking with emotion. And she stood there, this elderly widow in her floral dress, crying openly, her hands pressed to her heart. Halfway through the song, Elvis did something nobody expected. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a white handkerchief, the one with his initials embroidered in gold thread. He always carried it on stage. It was his signature. When the song ended, Elvis stood up, walked to the edge of the stage, and handed her the handkerchief. "This is for Bobby," he said. "Keep it with you. And know that his love for you was the kind of love that made this music matter." Dorothy took the handkerchief, held it to her chest, and sobbed. The arena erupted. 20,000 people on their feet, crying, cheering, witnessing something they'd never forget. Subscribe now. Drop a comment. Because what happened next? Nobody saw it coming. Elvis helped Dorothy back to her seat with the assistance of security, but he didn't return to the planned set list. Instead, he stood at the center of the stage, microphone in hand, and spoke directly to the crowd. "You know," he began, his voice still thick with emotion, "I've been doing this for a long time. 20 years. I've played to millions of people. I've had #1 hits, gold records, everything a man could ask for. But tonight reminded me why I started. It wasn't for the fame. It wasn't for the money. It was for moments like this. For people like Bobby and Dorothy who found joy in these songs." He paused, looking around the arena. "How many of you have lost someone you love?" Hands went up across the entire venue. "Thousands of them." Elvis nodded. "Music doesn't bring them back. But it keeps them alive in here." He tapped his chest. "That's what Bobby knew. That's what Dorothy knows. And that's what I want all of you to know. When you listen to these songs, you're not just hearing music. You're keeping memories alive. But here's the part nobody expected. The part that still gives people chills when they talk about that night." Elvis looked at his band. "Change of plans? We're not doing the closing song the usual way. I want everyone in this arena to sing with me. For Bobby. For everyone we've lost. This is for them." The band started playing "Can't Help Falling in Love," but Elvis stepped back from the microphone. He gestured for the audience to sing. And they did. 20,000 voices rose together, filling that arena with a sound so powerful it made the walls vibrate. Elvis stood there, in the center of the stage, listening. Tears streaming down his face. He wasn't performing anymore. He was experiencing. He was feeling what music could do when it connected people in their grief, in their love, in their humanity. When the song ended, Elvis didn't say a word. He just put his hand over his heart, bowed deeply, and walked off stage. The show was over. No encore. No goodbye. Just that moment, hanging in the air like smoke. But the story doesn't end there. Backstage, Elvis collapsed. Not from a heart attack or medical emergency, but from exhaustion. The emotion of what had just happened had drained everything from him. His manager found him sitting on the floor of his dressing room, still holding Dorothy's letter, crying quietly. "Boss, you okay?" Elvis looked up. "That was it, wasn't it? That was what it's supposed to be about." 3 days later, Elvis called his lawyers. He set up a trust fund in Dorothy Sinclair's name. Not a huge amount, just enough to make sure she'd be comfortable for the rest of her life. He never told her. She found out years later, after he passed away, when lawyers contacted her about the annual payments. But that's not what mattered most to her. What mattered was the handkerchief. She kept it in a frame on her wall until she died in 1989, at the age of 80. In her will, she requested it be buried with her, along with a photograph of Bobby. And she wanted one more thing. "Love Me Tender" played at her funeral. The legacy of that night spread like wildfire. People who were there told the story. Newspapers picked it up. But Elvis never talked about it publicly. When reporters asked, he just said, "Some moments are too sacred to explain." 52 days after that performance, on August 16, 1977, Elvis Presley died. The official cause was cardiac arrhythmia, but those who knew him said he'd been dying for a while. The grueling schedule, the prescription medications, the physical toll of performing at his size had all caught up with him. But that night in Memphis became legend. Bootleg recordings of the show circulated for years, though the audio quality was poor and you couldn't quite capture what it felt like to be there. Musicians who admired Elvis heard the story and were inspired. Bruce Springsteen later said in an interview, "When I heard what Elvis did for that woman, it changed how I thought about performing. It's not about you. It's about them. Always." Dorothy Sinclair never gave a major interview. She was contacted by magazines, TV shows, documentaries, but she declined them all. She only spoke about it once, to a local Memphis newspaper in 1985. The reporter asked her, "What was it like when Elvis sang to you?" Dorothy thought for a long moment before answering. "It felt like Bobby was there with me," she said. "Just for those 3 minutes he was back. And I got to say goodbye properly." The handkerchief became a symbol. Not just of Elvis's generosity, but of what music can do when it's wielded with intention and compassion. It reminded everyone that behind the fame, the glitter, the spectacle, Elvis Presley was a man who understood loss and loneliness and the power of a single gesture. In the years after his death, stories emerged of other times Elvis had done similar things. The time he stopped a concert to help a veteran in the crowd having a panic attack. The time he paid for a stranger's surgery after reading about their struggle in the newspaper. The time he bought groceries for an entire neighborhood during Christmas in one of Memphis's poorest districts. But the Dorothy Sinclair moment was different. It was public. It was witnessed. And it was proof that even at the height of his fame, even as his body was failing him, Elvis Presley never forgot what mattered. Share this story. Subscribe to keep these memories alive. Because some legends deserve to be told exactly as they happened. The Coliseum in Memphis still stands. They've renovated it several times, but if you go there and ask the older staff members, they'll tell you about that night. Some of them were there. They'll describe the silence when Elvis stopped singing. The sound of Dorothy's heels clicking on the arena floor as she walked down. The collective intake of breath when Elvis knelt down. And they'll tell you one more thing. Every year on June 25th, someone leaves a white handkerchief on the steps of the Coliseum. Nobody knows who. Nobody's ever caught them doing it. But it appears every single year, folded neatly, with a small note that just says, "For Bobby." Elvis Presley performed for 20 years. He sold over 1 billion records. He changed music forever. But on June 25, 1977, in Memphis, Tennessee, he did something greater than any hit song could achieve. He reminded the world that music isn't about the performer. It's about the connection. It's about the moment when a song reaches into your chest and makes you feel less alone. It's about honoring the people we've loved and lost by keeping their memory alive in melody and rhythm. That night, Elvis Presley didn't just sing to Dorothy Sinclair. He sang to every person who'd ever lost someone. Every person who'd ever wondered if their grief mattered. Every person who'd ever needed proof that compassion still existed in a world that often felt cold and commercial. And when he walked off that stage for the last time, he left behind more than a legacy of music. He left a blueprint for what it means to be human in a world that constantly tries to make us less so. The white handkerchief. the changed set list, the arena singing together. These weren't just acts of kindness. They were reminders that at the end of everything, when the lights go down and the crowd goes home, what matters is how we made people feel. Elvis Presley knew that. Dorothy Sinclair knew that. And everyone who was in that arena on June 25, 1977, learned it in a way they'd never forget. Make sure this story lives on. Share it. Talk about it. Remember it. Because in a world that often celebrates the wrong things, this moment stands as proof that true greatness isn't measured in awards or accolades. It's measured in handkerchiefs given to widows. In songs sung with intention. In moments when someone with everything stops to acknowledge someone with nothing, and in doing so, reminds us all what it means to be human. That was Elvis. Not the jumpsuit, not the fame, not the legend. Just a man who understood that music was a gift meant for those who needed it most. The handkerchief remains. The story remains. And the lesson is eternal. Greatness isn't what you achieve. It's what you give when nobody's watching. Rest in peace, Elvis. Rest in peace, Dorothy. Rest in peace, Bobby.